welcome back. We've been on a hiatus because I've been sick, basically. So we're going to try and talk about games in software education, I guess.
And I suppose like kind of the gamification side of things too. Yep.
Yeah, I think so. So this is Arlen Brower, of course, and I'm David Cooper, as you might remember. So, what's your favourite game, Arlen?
Oh. That you're just starting off with something very broad here. What is my favorite game? I can tell you the last one that I played, which was Red Dead Redemption 2, where you're a cowboy and you're going around doing cowboy things like robbing banks.
As you do.
So
I believe that's what cowboys historically did.
Yeah. And so that goes back to my heritage. So that's a great fun game to play.
Yeah. My favourite game of all time might have been Total Annihilation, which is a very macho-sounding game. It's just if you want to watch things blow up. But before that, I really, really liked Mario Brothers, Super Mario Brothers, and there's getting into teaching angle. I actually have examples in some of my lecture slides or lecture notes, at least, on how to design a Mario Brothers style game, just a little bit. But we want our assessments and course material, I guess, to be as engaging as possible.
Usually.
So, we usually do. Sometimes we want to bore students senseless.
You got to make them appreciate the cool stuff.
Yes. They can't all be cool. Some of it has to be terrible.
By design.
Yeah. So, what's your experience with gamifying or putting game-like elements into course material or assessments?
Yeah, so I suppose that some of the first times that I've really seen kind of game elements are actually in things like mid-semester tests, where there's only so many ways that you can ask a student, like, I want you to make like a 2D array. Why don't you do that? And then maybe do these things to it. So usually we try to, put some kind of scenario around that. And I think in a lot of ways, games just lend themselves nicely to those kinds of scenarios, right? If you have a 2D array, you basically can make a maze out of that.
Yeah.
If you have a 2D array, you can make Frogger out of that, or laser tank, all those sorts of things, which are things that Anthony and I have done for Unix and C programming. So I think that's usually what I've done with it. Is I know that here's this concept we want to teach, we want people to engage with. We don't want to just make it as simple as do an array.
Yeah, and you can. It's. I struggle at least to come up with engaging ideas about that aren't game based, I guess. So you could have a 2D array filled with numbers that just represent like a counting data or something. But it doesn't feel like a thing that a lot of people are going to get their teeth into somehow.
Yeah. Although I suppose there's also, if you're doing it with just numbers, then it can kind of become like a Sudoku puzzle. You can start to do things like that. But even then, that's still, a game.
Yeah. I love the idea of a maze because it's, you can, I guess this comes into one of the other aspects of it. Games can end up being quite complicated, which is a problem for scoping of assessments. But mazes can be really nice and simple. You can build them up from just the console. You can use the GUI if you want to, but you don't have to.
No.
I really love being able to just show people how to do colours in the console as well.
Yes.
Because that's a little bit of magic that I came across very early in my programming career, I guess. That's
even something that in Unix and C programming we would have, like no, I think it was maybe Unix systems programming, but there was some assignment where we would have like bonus marks for doing colors.
Yeah.
And I always like that, and people always engage well with that. I think it's always interesting to come up with something that's just a little bit more, I guess, aesthetically pleasing, or it engages that part of our brain. We're like, that thing is bright pink, that thing is blue. Nice.
Yeah, there's just a little bit of extra dopamine, I guess, that happens.
Exactly.
It keeps you going.
Exactly. I guess is that what we're ultimately kind of going for with kind of putting game elements in our assessments? Like, are we trying to get a little bit of extra dopamine? Are we bribing our students with dopamine?
We're not saying that, but we are.
It's a good thing that's not being recorded then.
Yeah. Oh, of course not. We'll edit that out, I'm sure. Or we could say the great unsaid thing, which is that we're encouraging them to do our assignment and not somebody else's assignment.
That's true. That is, in fact, one of the reasons why we've put in a decent amount of gamification into some of our assignments, is to make it distinctly different, with a set of requirements that aren't going to be as easily Googleable.
That's a good point. You can introduce these elements, I guess, to make them different, so that you can't. There are students who seem to just type in the assignment requirements into Google just to see what they can find, I guess, and inevitably, if they do find something, they're
and I mean, to a degree, that's not a bad idea. Like, what is this problem space? What does that look like? How have people actually solved this problem? It becomes a problem if they start copying code, though.
Yeah,
but
it's a little too easy. You need to have a great strength of character to see some code that actually does solve the problem in front of you and refrain from using it.
Yeah, I think I've always appreciated things like competitive handbooks, so like competitive programming handbooks, where they'll have a series of different algorithms. Right. Some of them have implementation, some of them are just pseudocode. But you look at that and it's like, that's exactly what I need. Grab that and adapt it. I think that's actually a pretty cool skill to have.
I mean, that's quite a professional skill, I guess, is to be able to look up an appropriate reference to find the thing you need to solve the problem.
Yeah.
On games, I guess, there are presumably better and worse ways to do it. What are some of the pitfalls that you can think of?
So I think on some level, I guess it kind of comes down to over-specializing the scenario. So I think on some level, a lot of people across the world enjoy games of some kind of description. It doesn't have to be video games where you're a cowboy robbing banks. Could be, football. It could be chess. We tend to, as a species, enjoy games, but if you get too weird with it, I think you run the risk of driving people away from it a little bit, or overcomplicating it.
Yeah. I know exactly what you mean, because I had one of my assessments. I got some input from one of my tutors at the time, and they came up with this specification, which was very in-depth role-playing game kind of thing. But they'd failed to articulate what all the different terminology in the game was, and so me as a bit of an outsider to that kind of game, I could immediately see nobody's going to understand what these terms mean.
Yeah, exactly. I guess there's some things that are enough in, I guess, the general mindset that it's all right. Things like scores. That people understand. You get good score, you do good.
Everyone understands number go up.
Yeah, or in the case of golf, number not go up, I guess. Yeah. But effectively, they understand those kinds of things. And then I think you can start to go towards things like, okay, levels. I think that's more in the mainstream sort of mindset these days.
So, yeah.
And then it can go further from there.
Yeah.
But I think in general, terminology is always something we're having to struggle with. We don't want to throw people off of things. And this actually happened in the programming languages exam from a couple years ago. Not exactly going at the game side of things, but it was a sort of like design a language for a autonomous aircraft, and I had talked about different things that needed to happen, and in that I had also mentioned a pitot tube. So without going into too much detail, a pitot tube is an instrument that measures pressure.
Yeah.
So very useful for aviation, but I didn't really think about it.
Yeah.
And I had so many people asking, "What's this? Is that a typo? Do you mean pilot tube?" I'm like, "Don't worry about it. It was there more for flavor than anything else."
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it just detracted from the intent.
You've got a few people panicking that they don't understand a thing that doesn't need to be there.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, luckily I was actually there and hung around for the entirety of that exam.
Yeah.
So anybody who had that question, we're all right.
Did everyone have that question, or did some people know what it was?
I think some people probably did know what it was. Some people probably just were able to identify this. It doesn't actually make a difference one way or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we live and learn, I guess. You can never be 100% certain what background knowledge everyone else is bringing to the table.
Exactly.
I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you make it too specialized of a game, people will potentially get disengaged by it.
Yeah, it's a balancing act to try to get the right kind of game that might not be quite as engaging as some games you could think of, but you want to have an extremely broad appeal in general.
And I haven't looked at it in a while, but I do remember reading some research on gamification in assignments where it would improve the overall outcomes, but not actually improve like the worst outcomes, which I thought was interesting because it kind of does show, or at least suggest, that some people are just disengaged by the idea.
It's a bit of a pity, I guess. But then again, in the real world, I guess you always have jobs to do that are not going to appeal to you. So you've got to knuckle down and do them anyway. So I feel like we shouldn't necessarily feel too bad about that.
That is true. But it's always a balancing act.
Yeah. Do you think we sometimes make it too complex?
I think that's the other kind of pitfall with it, right? Is we're ultimately trying to take something that's, I guess, in a way, fairly straightforward. Like, I want you to use an array. I want you to parse a file. I want you to do some calculations. If I just kind of list those out, I think those are all technically very easy to achieve. Yeah. But when you put them together, that's where it becomes a more interesting project. And I think the more weird things that you start tacking onto this to make it, more interesting or more robust against cheating or whatever the case might be, you do run against that issue of making it too complex.
Yes, and you feel in retrospect, I could have assessed the same knowledge in without requiring so much work, I guess, which is the trouble. But it's not always that easy to see at the time whether that's the case or not.
And I've even tried abstracting some of that complexity out. So one assignment I had for Introduction to Software Engineering was taking an output and mapping that. It was a maze output, as it happens, using just pluses and minuses and the pipe operator to make a little maze, and having them use box characters.
Yes.
So just a series of if-else statements, effectively. If it's this character around these characters, change it into this character. So really nice from a testing perspective because it gives a bunch of different pathways that they have to test for. But I didn't really want them to worry about making the maze itself, so I gave them some code. Yes. I was thinking, you know what? I really don't want them to mess with this. It should be obvious that they don't want to mess with it. It's in the assignment spec saying don't mess with the code.
Yeah.
So I made it in Ruby.
That's right, I remember that. You don't understand Ruby, and that's a good thing because you won't mess with this code.
Exactly. All you have to do is run it. It will spit that out. And sure enough, there were some people that were just completely baffled by that aspect. So again, something probably that I could do better, maybe by just having an executable that they can't actually look at whatsoever, or...
There is, that's possible, but then there's a whole bunch of other complicating factors, like it doesn't run on my weird operating system for some reason.
That's true.
But I often give students code where I say at the top, don't edit this file.
Yeah.
It seems to be clear enough to most people.
For most people, yeah. But we did have some people not only, modify that code, but they did their entire assignment in Ruby.
Wow.
Yeah.
I wonder maybe if they contract cheated a little bit. But,
yeah, it could be. I mean, it's certainly possible. So, that, again, going back to kind of one of the reasons for doing gamification, make it tricky enough to weed out a little bit of cheating. Maybe it succeeded in that sense.
It's really interesting when you have people who've done apparently a tremendous amount of work, but have gone way off into left field to do it.
Yeah. And we do see students go that way too. Like people that I know that are actually really good students, really smart, pick up a lot of things, and they will overthink, over-engineer, and take things in a completely different direction.
Yeah. Sometimes it is quite interesting and novel when they do that.
But stressful for them in a lot of cases. Yeah. Which, again, don't really want to stress out our students more than the requisite amount. Yes, there's a certain level of stress is actually healthy, I think, but obviously there's a balancing act there. So. I think so. Yeah. So, shall we leave it there for now? No, I think that's good. Yeah. Well, thank you for having me once again. My pleasure, and thank you for coming along.